Well, hi everyone, and welcome. I'm Susan Bowerman, registered dietitian. Welcome to my kitchen here in sunny California. It's a beautiful day here. It's October 31st. That means it's Halloween. It's one of my favorite holidays. And so, in honor of Halloween, I'm not going to give you a trick, but I am going to give you a treat. Um, I have been asked many, many times, could you develop a recipe for a cake pop? And so I have finally done it. And that's what we're going to do today. We are going to make some protein cake pops. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with cake pops, and I have to confess, I had seen them, but I didn't really know what they were. When I looked up the usual recipe, a cake pop is you bake a cake layer, you crumble it up, you mix it together with the cake frosting, and then roll it into balls and dip it into chocolate. So it's a lot of sugar and it's a lot of white flour and probably not much protein. I'm sure they're very delicious. And I know that many of our Herbalife distributors have been making cake pops also for their nutrition clubs, most of the time using our Formula One and protein drink mix, mixing it up with a little water, rolling them into balls, which seems to work really, really well. I've got a couple of additional ingredients that you're going to see in my cake pops, and I have a special coating that I'm going to put on them as well. So I'm really excited about this one because you all had asked for it, because I know you also love it when I make desserts because I don't do it that often. So we're going to do that in a minute. But before we do that, a couple of reminders. Number one, there is a comments section. If you would, let me know in the comments section where you're watching from so I can give you a shout out after we watch the video. I always love to know where you're watching from and appreciate the fact that you're watching sometimes from far away and sometimes at all hours of the night. And then also, if you have any questions about this recipe or anything else, any recipes I've done in the past, any questions about nutrition, if we have a few minutes at the end of the half an hour, I'll be happy to answer those as well. So with that, let's go ahead. Let's go watch and see how we're going to make these wonderful protein cake pops. But don't go away after the video because I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you about all the nutrition facts in our protein cake pops. All right, let's go to the video. Okay, so to get our cake pops started, the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to make the chocolate coating first, and then we're going to make our cake pops. So I think I told you in the beginning that most of these cake pops are coated with some kind of a melted candy, which is fine if you want to use that. I wanted to use something a little bit more natural, try to get a little bit of real chocolate in there. So we're going to use just some regular old chocolate chips. And what I'm using in order to melt my chocolate is I got this little chocolate melting pot. If you think this is something that you might want to do on a regular basis, I would encourage you to look for one of these because they're very inexpensive. And a couple things I like about them. Number one is they have a couple temperature settings. One to melt the chocolate. And then once the chocolate's melted, it has a temperature setting where it just holds the chocolate at that temperature. Chocolate melts at a very low temperature. It's just a little bit actually above body temperature. You don't want to overheat it because you run the risk of either burning it or getting it too loose and too runny, in which case it's going to be hard to coat your cake pops. So that's the reason I got this. Now, if you don't get one of these, that's fine. You can put your chocolate chips into a microwave safe bowl and you can put it in the microwave. Just check it, melt it for maybe a minute and a half, but check it every 20 seconds or so just to make sure that it isn't getting too hot. The third alternative, if you want to do it on the stove, is I would not recommend putting it in a saucepan directly on the heat. I would suggest that you put it more in a double boiler. So have a pan of hot water, put your pot on top with your chocolate in it, because it just burns too easily. All right, so here we've got this thing. I'm going to set this now to the chocolate melting temperature, and I'm going to use 2/3 of a cup of chocolate chips. These are milk chocolate. You can use dark chocolate, you can use semi-sweet, whatever you want. And what happens when you melt chocolate chips is they're still a little bit too thick for this coating. So what you're going to do is you're going to add a teaspoon of coconut oil to this mixture. And the reason for that is that coconut oil is going to loosen up the chocolate a little bit as it melts. But coconut oil, you can see it's solid when it's at room temperature. So that means once the chocolate cools again, it's also going to be solid. All right, so in other words, if you put oil in here, it's going to loosen up your chocolate, but it's also going to be too runny when it comes back to room temperature. So that's the reason we use coconut oil. All right, so this really just has to sit and melt. And so I'm just going to set that aside. As I said, I've got this on the melting temperature. Again, if you want to do this in the microwave, just watch it really carefully. And by the way, if that's the case, you can probably do this after you make the cake pops, not before. I'm just doing this because I'm able to set this aside and just let it do its thing. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and make the inside of our cake pops. Now, as I mentioned, traditional cake pops are crumbled up cake mixed with icing and rolled into a ball and then rolled into more chocolate. And then I've also seen distributors who have made cake pops with Formula 1 and with protein drink mix, which I'm going to do as well. But I wanted to put some other ingredients in there, not only to get a little bit more nutrition, but actually to give it a little bit more of a cakey texture. I found that just using the powders with water, it was a little bit too dense. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of oats. So I'm going to put in this blender a quarter of a cup of rolled oats. And I'm going to grind these up so that they're more the texture of a flour. So this is what's going to take just a couple seconds. All right. Now, this is, to me, this was the best option, but if you wanted to use something as instead, what you could use would be, I would think the next best thing would be an almond flour. I played around with it a bit, and almond flour works great in this recipe. So the same thing, be a quarter of a cup of just very finely ground almonds works great. All right, and then I'm going to put in here a half of a banana. All right, so I'm using about 3 inches of a banana. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm only going to make 8 cake pops, because I didn't want you to watch the tedium of me creating a whole bunch of them. But this recipe, you can very, very easily double it and make 16, which, again, if you're doing this, let's say for your nutrition clubs and you know you're going to need a lot of them, then that would be my recommendation. So that's going to go in here with the ground up oats. And then I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of oat milk. Lots of options there. You can use dairy milk, you can use any milk alternative, but we do need a little bit of extra liquid, because what's going to happen is this is going to be kind of the glue that's going to hold together our protein drink mix and our Formula 1. So I'm going to grind this up, blend this up. And just make sure that it's pretty well mixed. Looks like that's done. I'm going to check on my chips here. They're already starting to melt. I'm going to pull this over here so you can see. They're not ready yet, but you can see. And it's a very slow melt, and that's kind of what you want with your chocolate, because, as I said, you don't want to burn it. Burnt chocolate's not very tasty. So this is good. It should be ready by the time we get our cake pops ready. All right, so again, in here we've got our quarter of a cup of ground oats, we've got a half of a banana, about 3 inches, 3 tablespoons of oat milk. Okay, so this is going to go into a bowl, because as I said, you can see that's nice and thick, and that's going to hold the rest of the ingredients together. Now, when you do this, and you're going to see when I put the powders in, it's going to look like it's very, very dry. And you want this to be, when you do this, you want the cake pop part to be about the texture of like modeling clay. If any of you are potters out there and do anything with clay, you don't want this to be sticky when you're done, because if the filling is too loose and it's too sticky, when you go to put it onto your stick and you put it on there, it's going to slide down or it's going to fall off. So it needs to be really dense. All right, so 3 scoops of Formula 1. Now the other fun thing about this is that you can use any flavor you want to. I'm using cookies and cream. That just seemed like kind of a logical thing to do. But 3 scoops Formula 1, any flavor. And then 3 scoops of protein drink mix, any flavor. I'm using vanilla. But with all the options that we have, and flavors of PDM and flavors of Formula 1, you've got a lot that you can do. All right, so I'm stirring this, and as you can see, it looks very, very dry. But you want to just keep working at this to get this all blended in. If, and this is a big if when you do this, you still see there's a lot of dry material in your bowl, you can add a tiny bit more oat milk, about a teaspoon at a time, but no more, because again, you don't want it too sticky. But this really, I know it looks dry, but it's actually perfect. I'm going to show you, because now you got to get your hands involved. This is a very fun project, by the way, to do with little ones. So if you've got kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, neighbors, whatever, it's a lot of fun to do this, because you just get your hands in there. But you can see, yes, it is actually holding together. We want to try to get all of this into one ball so we can cut it up into equal pieces. And then any of those dry pieces, you can just kind of pick it up. There we go. All right, this is perfect. You could make all kinds of stuff with this. It really does feel like modeling clay. Okay, so if you were to weigh and measure this, you would probably have about 200 grams of a mixture. And I weighed it just because I was curious and I wanted to make sure that when I did this, that my cake pops were all the same size. So if you like to do that sort of thing and put it on a scale, you can. Each of your pops is going to weigh about 25 grams. It's about 3 ounces, just a little under 3 ounces, but you can just cut it. So now we're going to cut this into 8 pieces. As I told you, we're making 8. So we're going to cut it into 8 equal pieces like that. And as you can see, the texture is just great. This is going to, they're going to shape up really nicely when I roll these up in my hands into balls. And I love using the cookies and cream, because you can see the little cookie bits. All right, and then these you can roll and squish this stuff together as much as you want. Actually, the warmth of your hands kind of helps. And then we're just going to roll these into nice little round balls. So that's the cake pop part. Now, these are similar. You've probably seen me do stuff like this before. We've done protein balls before. And I kind of toyed with this idea of, should I just make a protein ball? And in those cases, I used a lot of dried fruit. I used nut butter. What else did I put in there? Some rolled oats. Obviously, our products, I put in some Rebuild Strength or some Formula 1, and they were great. But what I found was, with the nut butter and with the dried fruit, they were actually really heavy, and it was really hard to get them to stay on the stick. So that was why I had to go this route. So this, as I said, the texture is perfect, but they're not super heavy. So they really do, when you bite into them, they really do give you that sense almost of eating some cake with some frosting in it. But obviously it's a lot better for you. We didn't really add any sugar. We just got the natural sugar from the banana. We've got the rolled oats, which are adding a little bit of fiber. Not a ton, obviously, because we're making 8 cake pops. But still, why not? Sneak in a little nutrition when you can. All right, so these are pretty good. And they don't have to be perfect, because you're going to coat them with chocolate anyway. But if you have any areas where there's like little dents or creases, just kind of roll those on. And there we go. Now, the part with the chocolate is kind of a 2-step process. So let me get these out of the way so I can bring this over. I want you to see now where we are with this. So this is just about ready. The chocolate is smooth. As I stir it up, you can see that those few remaining chocolate chips are going to melt. And As I said, you can use milk chocolate, you can use dark chocolate, you can use semi-sweet chocolate, any one you want to. This is done. See, look how, isn't that great? And so this is really the perfect texture. I don't know if I already said this. I get lost sometimes. We're not going to use all of this, but you want to have enough in your pot so that when you go to dip your cake pops, that you've got enough to really work with. So one other thing that I like about this little pot is this insert, if you can see it, is silicone. So what that means is when I'm done with this, I can take that whole silicone pot out with whatever remaining chocolate is in there. I can put it in the refrigerator. It's going to harden, and then I can just pop it right out, and I can save it, and then I can reuse it, which is great. So that's another plus. All right, so as I said, this is a two-step process. And so what I mean by that is the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that these little sticks, these are about 6 inches, that these are going to get inserted into the cake pops, and also that they're going to hold. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your stick and you're going to dip it down into the chocolate about just maybe a ½ an inch or so, and just get a little bit, and then it's going to get inserted like that into the pop, and I'm going to set those aside on this dish. All right, and the reason to do that, oops, you stay up there, you. The reason for that is that once this bit of chocolate cools, it's going to harden, and it's going to secure the stick into the cake pop. All right, so that's and then you don't have to, you just have to talk to them and tell them that they have to stand up. And if you need to flatten them a little bit, that's okay, because you can reshape them. All right, so this is, again, first step is getting these adhered. Once I do all of these, I have two options. One is I can let them just sit at room temperature, and they'll cool, you know, like within an hour or two, they'll be cool and the chocolate will be firm. Or if you're kind of in a rush and you want to, you can stick them into the refrigerator. And if you do that, then obviously, oopsie, they'll cool a little bit faster. But either way, as I said, this is the hardest part, is getting them to obey. All right, so see, this guy doesn't want to stand up. So you're going to do that with each one of your pops. All right, this guy just is not going to cooperate at all. There we go. Each one of your pops. I have some that I've already done so that we don't have to wait for these to cool, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to finish them off. The finishing part is fun because you have a lot of options in terms of what you want to put onto your pops. So let's do this last one here, and you can see that this is just holding. Forgot to turn that down into the holding temperature, but it's just actually perfect. Okay, so stand up, you all. There we go. All right, so these are ready. I'm going to put these aside carefully. All right, there we go. All right, put those aside. Let me bring out the ones that I did earlier. So these are ones that I prepared before. And what you can see now is the chocolate is nice and firm, and it's sticking perfectly to our pop, right? So we're ready to now do the coating section. And what I would say here is as I said, you've got some options in terms of what you might want to put on there. I've got some just your regular sprinkles. I've got the bigger sprinkles. And then I've got also some ground up walnuts, because I thought that might be nice with the chocolate. And then I've also got some crushed up graham crackers. I just put these into a plastic bag and just rolled them with a rolling pin. Now, when you go to coat these, since this is all ready and it's at the perfect temperature, you're just going to go ahead and dip these in there. And let's move this over so the overhead camera can see. We're going to dip these in here like this. Swirl it around, and then what I like to do is just then kind of twirl it around in the pot a little bit and get the excess off, because you don't want a ton on here. You just really want enough to give it a nice little chocolate flavor, and yet enough that's going to hold your topping. So let me get my stand ready here too. So the other thing that you're going to need to make these is you're going to need some kind of a stand. You can buy, they make acrylic cake pop holders, or you can just use a piece of styrofoam. Or if you have a husband like mine who's a woodworker, you can say, honey, would you please drill some holes in a piece of wood for me and make a cake pop stand, which he did, which was great. All right, so this is ready. Now, when you go to put these toppings on, please don't dip them in there because you're going to make a big mess, because you're just going to get chocolate in there. So take a spoon or take your hands and just put the sprinkles on like that. Because if you dip the chocolate in there, it's just going to become a big mess of chocolate. Look how cute that is. This is so great. And then because it was Halloween, I was really tempted to, try to decorate them to look like pumpkins or witches, but no time for that. But you do need a stand. And all those need to do now is they just need to dry for, as I said, if they're at room temperature, maybe dry for maybe a couple hours. You can put them into the refrigerator if you want to. I don't think they really need to. It doesn't really take that long for the chocolate to harden. But as I said, just don't get this too thick, because if you do, it's going to take a lot longer for it to get hard. You just want a really thin little chocolate coating on there. And again, we'll do this with this one, so you can just use your fingers as much or as little as you want. And this, honestly, I measured this out to try to figure out how much I was using, and it's a tiny, tiny amount. This adds almost no calories. So it's just for, I know you guys like to do things that are fun. So we've got that, and then as I said, we could do this one with some nuts in there, which I think will be that'll be kind of nice. Nuts and chocolate is a nice flavor. Yeah, this is great. And the other thing about these, once I tabulated the nutrition information, I was very pleased because they look pretty good. So we were able to get some nutrition in there as well. I like this one with the nuts on it. I think that looks quite delicious because nuts and chocolate are so good. All right, and then the last one that we'll do here, we'll just do one more. We'll do this one with the graham crackers. For those of you who live in other areas of the world, maybe you don't know what a graham cracker is, but would be similar to a tea biscuit if you have those. It's just a very plain, simple, slightly sweet. It's like a cookie. And the reason I wanted to use them is because here in the US we make something called a s'more, which is like some more, and it's an old recipe that people like to make around the campfire, where you take these little graham crackers or these very simple plain biscuits and you sandwich them with some marshmallow and some chocolate. So the combination of chocolate and graham crackers is kind of a classic here in the US because they remind us of these s'mores. We don't have any marshmallow, but we've got everything else. That's kind of nice too. And of course you can mix these together. You can put some sprinkles on that too. All right, so there you have it, my friends. We had a little issue getting our cake pops to stand up. My husband drilled that hole a little too deep, so that one was sinking. But there we go. These are great. I'm not going to bite into it because it's a little bit messy, but trust me, I did taste these. They're delicious. And as I said, the nutrition information on these is better than you might think. So don't go away, because when we come back, I'm going to tell you about the protein, the calories, the carbohydrates, the fiber, even we got a little fiber in there. I'm going to tell you everything that's in our protein cake pops. So don't go away. Okay, everyone. So how much fun was that? It's not a difficult recipe. As you can see, there's not a lot of ingredients. The hardest part is just getting the protein, the little cake balls to cooperate. But there is a little bit of practice with the technique, but once you get it down, it's great. It's a lot of fun, very versatile. As I say, you can use any flavor of Formula One. So have fun with that one. Before I give you the nutrition facts, I want to give a few shout outs. First of all, to Julie and Celeste are watching from France. Thank you so much, because I know it's probably evening time or maybe maybe later for you there. Miriam's watching from Laredo, Texas. Hi, Miriam. It's good to have you here. Nicola's watching from London. I think it's pretty late over there as well. We've got Michelle watching from Miami. Hi, Michelle. Hope you're out having a really fun Halloween or have got plans tonight. Eileen, I hope I said that right, watching from Belgium. So greetings. We're happy to have you. Senna is watching from Turkey. Thank you so much for joining us today. Manon's watching from Canada. Mary is watching from South Africa, where I am sure it's the middle of the night. So, Mary, thank you for taking time out of your night to be here. It's great to have all of you here. I'm really, really happy that you're taking time out of your day. All right, so very quickly, let's talk about the nutrition facts. So, when I've talked to distributors who have made these, I have a feeling my cake pops are a little bit larger because my calories are a little bit higher than what they're coming out with, but still very reasonable, and it makes a really healthy snack. So we've got 110 calories in my cake pops, 6 grams of protein. So imagine that. When I described to you how a traditional cake pop is made with cake and frosting, you'd never get that in there at all. 13 grams of carbohydrate, but remember, some of that's coming from the products, which is wonderful, and some's coming naturally from the banana and, of course, from the oatmeal. 4 grams of fat. Most of that's coming from the melted chocolate on the outside, and we even snuck in a gram of fiber. So all in all, as I said, makes a great snack. So in the couple minutes left, let me answer your questions really quickly. Somebody wants to know, what melting pot do I recommend? I'm not going to mention brand names, but I will tell you, if you search for melting pots, there's one brand that seems to come up a lot. They're inexpensive, relatively speaking. I think mine was about $30. And as I said, I like the fact that it had that silicone insert, because you just put that whole thing in the refrigerator. Once it cools down, you can pop the chocolate out, put it back, in a storage container and reuse it, which is great. Another question I got was, what about using baked goods mix? And it's a good question. I think it would probably work. It's going to add more protein, of course. I was using the oats because I wanted to lighten up the texture a little bit. And I'm not sure if that would work, but would love to know. And maybe when I have time, I'll experiment with that. Tracy wants to know, what kind of chocolate chips should you use? Tracy, you can use any one you want. I used milk chocolate. But I did, as I said, I wanted to use just the regular chocolate chips, like what you put in a cookie, as opposed to the candy that they sell to make the coating for these, just because it was just my choice. I just felt the ingredients were a little bit more natural, and that's what I wanted to go for. So you can use dark chocolate, semi-sweet, milk chocolate, whatever kind you want to, and they all work great. But you will need that extra little teaspoon of coconut oil just to help it to melt a little bit. Somebody wanted to know, will we share the recipe? The recipe's in the caption of the video, so you can find it there. And Tanya wants to know what kind of nuts I used. And Tanya, I just used chopped up walnuts, but you can use any kind you want. I think pecans would be really good. I think peanuts would even be fun. So I think whatever you want. Elizabeth wants to know, can you taste the banana? So I didn't, because I think that once you get in the protein drink mix and the Formula One, the banana's really there just to add moisture and add sweetness. So if you're somebody who's really, really sensitive to the taste of banana, I don't think it's not a very strong flavor at all. So I think you should be fine. And then lastly, Betty wants to know, what is the serving? So the serving would be 1 cake pop. But as I said, I think mine are a little bit bigger than what some of our distributors have been making. I was really happy, frankly, with the nutrition facts on these, because they're filling. You've got 6 grams of protein in there, and they're very satisfying. So one is, to me, was plenty for a snack. So anyway, I hope you all had fun with that. It was a good treat, I think, as I said, for Halloween and beyond. So again, thanks to everybody for spending time with me this half hour. I know you all have other things that you could be doing, so it's nice to have you here. I'll be back soon with another recipe. Until then, take care. If you go out tonight for trick or treat, be safe, and I'll see you all very soon. Thanks.